Ladies and gentlemen, if you are hearing this, you have once again tuned in the Consequence of Habit podcast. This is your host, JT. This podcast, like all the other podcasts, are brought to you by our friends at Athletic Brewing Company. These guys are making the finest craft beer out there. Oh, by the way, it doesn't have alcohol. It's a non-alcoholic beer. So if you want really good beer, but you don't want the negative effects of alcohol for whatever reason, I don't know what your reason is. You got to drive, you got something going on with your kids, or you're like me, you just don't drink. Alcohol doesn't play a part in your life anymore, but you still really enjoy craft beer, then do yourself a favor. Log on to athleticbrewing.com. Use the promo code, capital COH20, and get 20% off your first order. Lucky you. Look at you. This week on the podcast, we have Danielle Cook. Oh, I said that right. Chances are I didn't. And Mr. Simon Mathews. And these guys are from First in Wellness. First in Wellness is, well, it's a wellness program. And it's serving the people that serve us. You know, when we talk about firemen and police officers, and you think about their job, I mean, these men and women are dealing with traumatic incidents day in and day out. And a lot of times they're doing it on shift. Well, they're always doing it on shift work, which means a lot of times they're doing it with little or no sleep. And we're expecting them to make these life or death decisions. And then having a lot of times these communities, they don't want to talk about their feelings, right? They don't want to say, hey, I'm struggling. Or, hey, I'm drinking too much because I'm trying to find calmness in my brain after an absolutely insane day. Well, I'm here to tell you that these things do not serve these communities long term. These men and women are suffering sometimes. And, there's organizations like this First in Wellness and what Danielle and Simon are doing, it's here to help them. So it was awesome talking to them. I'm excited about their program, excited about what they're doing. It falls right in line with the mission behind Consequence of Habit. So without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Danielle and Simon from First in Wellness. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is JT here at the Consequence of Habit podcast. Today, we are honored to have on Danielle Cowash. I said Kawash. Danielle Cowash and Simon Mathews. Sorry, I told you. I told you it was going to happen. From First in Wellness. Guys, thank you so much for joining the podcast here.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks, JT.
So I love the concept, and I could try and describe it, but I feel like I would probably butcher that almost like I did your last name. So let's explain what First in Wellness is and really what the motivation behind it was.
First in Wellness is a health and wellness program for first responders. That's the easiest way to describe it. And we'll go into more of the details, I think, throughout this conversation. But right now, we've just launched a 90-day resilience program. And the idea behind that is to build both physical and psychological resilience in first responders. And we do that in a number of ways. And we'll go into that a little bit more. And kind of the reason we started First in Wellness was kind of a long story, but the short of it is I really lost my health in my early mid-30s and have regained that. But I made it kind of my purpose in life to help people to maintain or regain their health and wellness. And so at my previous job, we started doing some health and wellness programs for firefighters, and we worked with two different departments. And I really quickly learned that a firefighter and first responders in general can lose their health in a moment. And so there are a lot of things stacked up against them. And so I became very passionate about helping first responders to maintain their health and wellness and not only just survive what they're doing, their lives, their careers, but actually thrive. And so that's what we made our mission. And we'll maybe go into the story about Simon and I met, but Simon and I met a little over a year ago, and we quickly bonded on our passion for health and wellness. I'll let Simon tell a little bit more about his background, but he's got a really strong background in health and wellness, as well as coaching and helping people not only just learn information, but take that information and put it to use and make it into habits, which I know this podcast talks a lot about. And I'm sure you and Simon will have a great conversation about forming habits, healthy habits, but that's kind of how First in Wellness started.
Okay. Yeah, that was really my next question is this connection, because anyone listening to this and you hear Simon talk, you're going to hear his accent, and you guys are, and it's not like you're close. Simon's in Australia. So that was really, I'm curious on how you guys' connection happened and how you guys found this common ground.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, JT. I'm on the east coast of Australia, about an hour north of Sydney, and maybe it'll take some folks just a little bit longer than this to get used to the sound of my voice. But Danielle and I met in January last year, January 2021, just before the pandemic, in, of all places, Naples, Florida. So we were both there for a professional coach training program, and we're part of a small group of people. We just happened to meet. We made a really strong connection really quickly, and at that time, Danielle was just getting First in Wellness going, and she asked me a couple of months later, after I was back here in Australia, whether I'd be interested in coming on board as part of that program, and in particular, looking at the coaching component of it. And my background is that I've been a psychologist for nearly 25 years out here in Australia. I've spent 30 years of my professional career working in the area of behaviour change, and the last 15 of those in particular, the area of health behaviour change specifically. And back in the day, so I really am talking back in the day here, back in the probably the mid-90s, in the early 90s actually, was when I first started working with first responders. But at that time, I was on the other side of the fence. So I was working in a EAP, Employee Assistance Program context, often seeing people when things were already starting to not go so well for them. And like a lot of people, first responders often waited a long time before they reached out to EAP. After that, I started working with first responders who were off work for a long period of time, often with workers' compensation claims. So sometimes they were able to return to work, sometimes they weren't. So when this opportunity came up to jump in several months and often years before that and support people to actually maintain their health and well-being rather than work with them once things had gone a bit south for them, I jumped at it. It was a lovely opportunity to bring to life so many things that I believe about health, about how we live our lives, and about the things that we can do, the things that we can all do pretty much every moment of every day that will take a small step towards helping us stay healthy.
Simon, you're talking my language. I love it. I mean, so I haven't officially announced it, but we've started a nonprofit, and my initial idea was, I thought about myself. I thought about, all right, what were some of my own struggles, and how was I self-medicating and dealing with my own struggles, and how can we help other people that maybe are in the same boat? And I'm like, well, I'll help get people maybe into like a treatment facility. And then we found out what that cost and what were the finances associated with that. And we immediately, as an organization, say, well, we got to pivot because we want to have the most impact as possible. And then it's just not in our financially, it's going to be a real struggle to be able to do these things. But if we start dealing or helping people earlier on what they're doing on a daily basis, and like you said, almost every minute of the day, and we have a program of something to help them to maintain a level of physical, mental fitness, then all of these other things, we hopefully we avoid them. And I think that's, Danielle, I think that's about when we had our conversation. Yeah. And I saw what you guys, kind of what your mission statement was, what you're trying to achieve. And I said, man, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm excited to get into it. Let's jump into it. How does the program work? What are kind of your pillars with as far as wellness, and how do you go about working with first responders?
Yeah, I mean, really, there are I would say 5 main pillars that we use in our program. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a second, but the first would be nutrition. So what are you fueling your body with? And that's going to build both physical health, which is kind of a no-brainer. We always think about, what are you eating to fuel your workouts or whatnot? But it's also helping to fuel your mental health and keep you mentally healthy. The second pillar is stress modulation or nurturing your mental health. And again, that's both going to help you physically as well as mentally. The third pillar is sleep, which I know is a struggle for many people in the world, especially first responders with their wacky schedules and the high stress of the job and having to remain very hypervigilant a lot of the time. So it's hard to get really restorative sleep, especially. And then a fourth pillar would be physical activity or exercise. We have an exercise part of our program, which Mike Salemi, one of our other partners, runs. If you've ever used a kettlebell or been curious about kettlebells or started researching kettlebells at all, then you know Mike Salemi. He's kind of a badass in that area. And then I would say the fifth pillar of mental health is connection, social connection. And we use that in a number of different ways, but one of them is with the group coaching that we do. And so just getting people to, talk about habits they're working on changing, or different experiments they're trying with their health and wellness, but also maybe some struggles and some hurdles that they're trying to overcome, and or hurdles that they've overcome in the past and how they've done it. And so we've seen in our group coaching that it's really nice having that community, because one person will be talking about something. Like I remember someone talking about sleep with Simon a couple weeks ago, and he was just talking about some of his struggles with sleep. And then another guy said, oh, wow, yeah, I had those same issues before, and here's some of the things I tried, and my sleep is so much better. And now I notice if I don't do X, Y, and Z, my sleep is not as restorative. And so that community, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And pillars. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, JC.
No. I started cutting you off. I was going to see what you had to say on the same thing.
I was just going to add that the pillars is actually really nice language to use here, because if you think about what a pillar does, I mean, essentially it holds up a roof. And if you think about the roof as your health and well-being, then all those pillars have a job to do. And when you take one of those pillars away, 4 of them or 3 of them or 2 of them are left to do all the heavy lifting. And so Danielle and I do this, we're doing it right now. We're talking about them as if they're individual. We're talking about nutrition and sleep and social support and so on. But in fact, they all link really strongly. And this was one of the things that really led me into health behaviour change in particular, because I've been a psychologist for a number of years. I was sitting here in my office where I am right now and working with people day in, day out on things like depression and anxiety. And at the same time, I was starting to read about the powerful influence that food and nutrition has on your mood. It directly affects your mood, and the amount of exercise and activity you do directly affects your mood. So after a while, I started thinking, why am I sitting here talking about depression and anxiety? But there's just so much more to this picture to be able to support people to regain good mental health. So that's kind of what led me down that pathway. But recognizing, and this is one of the things that we try to do, we support people to recognize that all of these things are linked. That when my nutrition improves, I can start looking around, not just at kind of how I feel in my stomach or in my chest or something like that, but what's happened to my mood? What's happened to my sleep? What's happened to the way I'm connecting and interacting with other people? And it's those links that are really powerful.
Yeah, there's something to be said too about just taking ownership of other aspects of your life. I think a lot of people within those communities, they kind of feel they're a slave to this crazy schedule. And or if it comes to nutrition, they have a very small window sometimes to grab something to eat. So they need something quick. Their sleep is obviously dictated by what shift they happen to be on this week I definitely think there's something about having some ownership over those things and taking it on yourself. But you mentioned you were working with people after the fact, a lot of times in a previous position. Why do you think it takes that people get to that point? What is it about these communities? And I think we probably already know the answer to this, but I would like to hear it from you also. What is it about these communities that keeps them from coming forward maybe earlier before it's gotten to the point where they've had to go to their department? Because a lot of people, that's the last thing they want to do.
Yeah, that's a great question, JT. And I think there's kind of three layers to it. I think there's the individual layer, and there's the kind of the structural layer, so the way the job is. But there's also I'll call it the corporate layer, and by that I mean things like organisational values and so on. So at the individual level, we all vary in this. So some of us respond very, very quickly with the smallest stimulus to do something different in our lives when we feel like things are just not quite right, and others of us will let things go on and on and on before we make a change. Now you combine that with the demands of the job. You just mentioned things like shift work and so on. And demands that kind of, almost literally sometimes throw people between pillar and post. So when you've got, what time is it here? It's 5:50 in the morning here. So I got up at 5 o'clock this morning. Not terribly much earlier than my usual waking time, but got to think a little bit differently, got to wrap your head around it. And when you're getting up at 10 o'clock at night to start a shift at midnight, or you're finishing at 4 a.m. after overtime, that really does kind of throw your body and your head around. And then there's the third layer, which is the values that get embedded in that. And we use language like heroes for first responders, and that language is spot on. Danielle and I were talking about this last week. The idea of a hero being someone who goes way above and beyond, puts their own needs aside in order to make sure that someone else gets what they need. That's a hero. But heroes need to sleep too. Heroes need a good feed too. Heroes need some friends around them to say, how are you doing? Heroes need to just chill out for a while and do something that they like doing for them that helps to build them up. And so a lot of the time we kind of create this discourse, I think, where we see these people as bulletproof and unassailable and can go on forever. And so we end up kind of treating them like, come on, just keep going, pick yourself up. Move on, move forward. So we talk about it, and I appreciate what you're saying about individual responsibility. And at the bottom of it all, that's always the first lever that we can pull, our own choices. but the actual picture is so much more complex than just an individual's kind of own practices. And I think that's something that we sometimes don't recognise.
Yeah, I always wanted to be careful on saying that, because I'm only going off my own experiences. But when you're not sleeping, you're eating like crap. What is it? The saying, your body keeps score, and so it. Like, hey, I ate a gordita or Taco Bell or some garbage last night. I know I haven't slept. I know I'm stressed out. I know people refer to me as a hero, and no one ever saw Superman ask for help because he's depressed. So I'm just going to kind of keep trying to push through this. And Danielle, you mentioned the group part too, and having people within the same profession, right? The same stressors. I can almost, I think of almost like a 12-step program. If you talk to somebody who maybe had an issue in substance misuse, say alcohol, they like to be around their own people because they can truly open up and they can say what's honestly, what they're feeling honestly, where they may not feel open, or they won't feel open if they weren't in that environment. So what has that experience been for you guys to see these men and women just be able to do just that, just kind of open up to what's really going on?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is it normalizes things. So, a lot of in the past, and I think this is changing a bit, but it's almost like a badge of courage, or just this badge that people wear, not of courage, but a badge that people wear that, I only sleep 5 hours a night, or, I can work 3 shifts in a row, 3 24s, and I'm fine. And yeah, you're probably fine for a while, but after a while, just like you said, your body keeps score and it starts to chip away at your resilience. And so I think just, with the group coaching, what we've seen and we were a little hesitant, like, is group coaching going to work? Are they going to open up in front of one another? And are they going to open up in front of us? Because trust is a big issue when we're talking about first responders. And, as we get to know them better, they start to open up. And I think part of it, too, is as they start to see some even small changes in their body, maybe things that they've been struggling with, whether it be their weight or their blood pressure or their sleep or whatever, and they start to see these small changes in their bodies, then the trust starts to kind of open up a little bit. And then just talking about sleep, nutrition, stress modulation, different things that maybe aren't the things that they're talking about around, the dinner table at night. These things hopefully start to become more normal in everyday conversation. And I think another thing, and I'll kind of jump off what Simon was saying, is just from an organizational level. If you get the higher ups to invest both time and money in their first responders and show that this is really important to us, that you're healthy, then there's a little bit more, I think there's more willingness to actually be invested in their own health and wellness, because this organization cares about them. And they're sending the message that, yeah, your mental and physical health is really important to us, and here's how we're going to support you. So I think all those elements together, they just set up an environment that, one, normalizes things, but also just lends a lot more support so they can, it's okay to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been my experience in having both veterans and first responders on. And I always want to be careful because, the effects of stress and trauma are not unique to these groups, right? I just think within these groups, there's been such a stigma about coming forward about them. But I feel like we're in a really great time where things are shifting, right? Things are starting to change. What has been your interaction with management? How open have they been? Not specific departments, but just kind of overall, if you went to 50 departments, what has been their response?
I think with talking to different departments and the experiences I've had with the different departments in health and wellness programs, there's definitely an interest. And not only just like, okay, we're going to check this box that we've done a health and wellness program, where, maybe they show them have them watch a few videos and answer a few questions and, okay, let's check that box. There's this interest and willingness to invest more in a program that's actually going to make their first responders. And in my experience, I've worked with firefighters, so help their firefighters be more accountable to their health and wellness. And that's one of the things I think really differs with our programs is just, we set it up so there's accountability. So we do a lot of baseline and post testing. We're gathering a lot of data. We're asking a lot of questions. We're meeting with people regularly. And so it creates a lot of accountability on everyone's part. Our part as well. Yeah. And it's interesting. I was talking to the chief of police in Palo Alto few months ago, and we were having a conversation about first and wellness and just what we're trying to do. And we're talking about, okay, well, in the near future, next year or two, we want to have a 90-day resilience program for police officers as well. And it's interesting. He is very invested in mental wellness and is, I'm blanking on the name of his program, but I'm going to look it up while you guys are talking. But sure. But anyway, what he said to me about health and wellness in the police department specifically was, look, a couple years ago, there was a little crack in the door. And right now, and you're going to see in the next few years, that door is going to get kicked wide open. And so things are changing rapidly. I think people are talking now. People are more aware of their health and wellness. And I think this is, just in general in the world, with we can get information and go on and ask Dr. Google something. And so people are a lot more curious, and curiosity, I think, builds and can lead to a lot of habits. And sure. So I think that's kind of one of the first steps is, just being curious about your health and thinking about it. And that comes way before people make changes. And so I think that's what's happening in just the first responder environment in general.
Yeah. Simon, I'm curious, how similar have the experiences been in Australia? I mean, are you guys years ahead of us, or what's that look like?
Yeah, great question, JT. And the short answer is very, very similar. Okay. So back in the 90s, when I first started working with first responders, I would say that there was certainly a perception on the part of a great number of first responders. And I'm going to add in here too that the early 90s really is when things like the AP, employee assistance programs, first kind of started developing here. And at that time, there really was quite a punitive response, I think, to people putting their hand up and saying, I'm struggling here. And of course, that immediately just creates a cycle of distrust and people not wanting to raise their hand. And one of the elements of this that people perceived strongly as punitive was that first responders, possibly in a way that I don't see in other professions, although I feel very committed to and passionate about my work. But first responders are so invested in the work that they do; they absolutely love it. Same with military personnel. They are very deeply committed to their work, and so when someone says to a first responder, well, we don't think your mental health's up to scratch, so we're going to put you off work for 3 months. That's crushing. That just kind of strips from that person so much of their sense of purpose and value and worth and so on. And so, of course, that's what we saw happening. People in middle and senior management would respond with often just one kind of tool, which was, well, either you're fit enough to be here or you've got to be off work, full stop. And so that led, I think, over time to this sense of people just saying, well, I'm just going to shut up about it. I'm not going to talk about it because if I do, look what happens. Yeah. So thankfully, we've moved a long way from that.
I think it's one of the biggest problems. I think you can say stigma but when someone feels there, like you said, that there's a punitive response for coming forward, it takes what you're already feeling, which is usually going to be associated with some type of shame and guilt, right? Because it's, you're not supposed to be suffering, even though you're dealing with traumatic incidents on a regular basis on no or little sleep. And we're shocked that these people might be suffering in some way, but when you feel that coming forward is going to have these negative effects on you, and then you hide it, and when you hide it, it's like, you obviously know a lot more than I do, but I go off my own experiences. When you start hiding things, then you start wanting to feel better, so you find things that make you feel better in a very short, small, a quick time, and you start self-medicating these ways, these things, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then at some point, you got to do something, right? And something's got to give. And maybe you start a podcast about it, and then it's called Consequence of Habit. I'm joking, but yeah. So I'm excited to see the changes happening. We were talking right before I hit record here, and I'm going to be having General Martin on, a retired Major General, and he talks about, he has an op-ed that came out, and you guys have seen it, where he talks about his own mental illness. And since he's put that out, he says he's had at least 300 messages of people responding to him saying, hey, this is so important. We need to be talking about this. But what I really took away from what he said was, if I had done this 20 years ago, the messages I would have gotten were, you're weak, suck it up, press on. If you were stronger, you wouldn't be dealing with this. And I was like, I was just blown away. I mean, you do not have to go, very far in history to find such a completely different way of thinking about things. And in a sad way, I think what's been on the forefront as far as PTSD with veterans, it sucks that it's taken that, but I think some of that has kind of bled over to the first responder community, and we're saying, these men and women are dealing with some of the same stuff. Why wouldn't they have the same issues with it? That's not a question. I'm more just dumping it on you guys' lap. I'm just yapping.
Well, you mentioned sleep. Sleep alone. There was a study not too many years ago, just a few years back, and they were looking at burnout and early burnout in firefighters, and one of the causes is lack of sleep or sleep deprivation, and it makes sense too. When you sleep, especially your REM sleep, when you're going through REM sleep, that's when your brain is processing all the trauma of the day, everything that you went through mentally that day. And so if you're only getting 5 hours of sleep and it's disrupted and you're never really going into REM or deep sleep, but especially REM, then you're not able to process that. And imagine year after year after year after year of that, it starts to stack up.
Yeah, it's the sleep thing is, I know when I was doing shift work that I think a day out, maybe a day and a half, when I knew I had to be up all night the next night, I would start getting grumpy. And I'm like, man, I go, what is going on? Because I just didn't have the emotional awareness at the time to connect the two. It's like I was dreading it. My body was dreading it. And you just walk around in this kind of, you're half there. But you're not fully emotionally, mentally in the game. And then you ask people to make life or death like decision making. It's insane. It's truly insane. But all right, so we've truly identified the problem. Let's talk about how your program, if you could just kind of walk us through it a little bit on how it works and really just how it's benefiting the first responders.
Sure. So we start off it's a 90-day program. The beginning of the program starts off with COVID. We had to do everything online, but we're hoping that that's going to change soon. So the first time we meet would be in the station. We get everyone onboarded onto the program. Mike comes in, shows them a lot of the basic movements. They do a little workout together. We get them all set up on the two tech devices we use. One of them is called an Oura Ring. I have one on right now. It's a tracking device, kind of like a Fitbit, but a little bit more accurate. It's on the digital pulse, so it can measure heart rate and heart rate variability a little bit more accurately. And those are a couple of the things that we're looking at in the program. So we get them set up on that. We also get them set up on a device called Eversleep. And Eversleep is a device that's kind of like a home sleep study. And so we're looking at breathing interruptions. We're looking at O2 sats. We're looking at movement, snoring, a whole bunch of different factors with sleep. And so we're trying to look at someone's quality of sleep. And if there are any big red flags in there, like they're having, multiple breathing interruptions, their O2 sats are dropping below like 88, then we're recommending they go see one of their physicians. And we've had a couple people that we've suggested that they go talk to their doctors. So we're just trying to make sure that we're setting them up in the very beginning of the program to make sure that we're going to build their bodies up and help them be successful in this. The other things that those two tracking devices have, they both have a coaching portion to them. So Oura is communicating with them every day about their sleep, about their HRV and what they have a readiness score that they get for how ready they are to, go for it that day. And then the Eversleep also gives them coaching about their sleep. And so those are a way that we can also, continuously be engaging participants in the program and also just be giving them information. And then what they do with that information is up to them. But we want them to have that information so that they can take action if they want. They can talk to us about it. And so that's the beginning of the program. And then we also have them do a little bit of baseline testing. So we do a 1-minute push-up test, which has been correlated with cardiovascular risk. If they can't do many push-ups, we have them do some measurements, height and weight, and then we have them fill out some forms that have been validated for things for sleep and some other things. Then we take them through 3 different modules. So nutrition, stress modulation and mental health, and then sleep. And then they're also at the same time, kind of parallel to those 3 modules, they're going through a fitness program with Mike Salemi. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the 3 modules are all set up in the same format. It starts off with a week of videos that they watch. And these videos, we try to make them short. So they're from 5 minutes. I think there's one that is like 25 minutes in the first module, but we try to keep them, short bits of information. Mm-hmm. And that's where we give them the science behind why we're making any suggestions we're making. And the feedback we've gotten is, wow, I knew sugar wasn't very healthy, but I didn't know actually what it does in your body. And other things about what they're eating in their diet. So then they do that. They watch these videos. And then after that first week, they meet with the coach for the first time in that group setting. And then they set a 2-week goal or an experiment or a challenge or whatever you want to call it, where they can experiment with some of that information that they learned about in that first week. Then at the end, somewhere between week 3 and 4, towards the end of that module, they meet with the coach again. And they talk about, how their experiment went, what they'd like to continue doing, and what their experience was like. And then we go on to module 2 and 3 in the same format. And then the fitness program is a kettlebell program. So we wanted something that would be inexpensive for the department. And so they can do the whole program with 1 or 2 kettlebells. And we also wanted it to be something that they could do at home. So if they have 1 or 2 kettlebells at home, then they can do the program at home as well as at work. Mike is also adding in some bonus workouts with body weight, with sandbags, with, a backpack full of sand or books. So we're going to have some other workouts, because one of the things, kettlebell is great for building some strength, some agility, some cardio, but we also want to have some workouts that have heavy, awkward loads that mimic a lot of what firefighters are having to do on their jobs. Simon, I'll let you talk a little bit more about the coaching, but that's kind of the overall of the program. At the end of the program, we have a wrap up where we do the testing again. They fill out the forms again. And then after that, we give each participant a summary of all their data and any suggestions. And then we give the department a summary of that data. All of the participants' individual information is kept confidential. So we don't share anything with the department. They can tell the department things if they want, but we just give the department an overall summary of different stats. And then at 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, and 3 years, we ask the participants to do testing again and fill out a couple forms. If they're still wearing the Oura ring, we ask them for a couple data points on that. And then we give the department a summary of that data as well.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, JT, that makes the First in Wellness program different from others, or a lot of others, is that we don't. So at baseline, we don't have a perspective that we need to push information into your heads, and when you get this information, your life will change. Because that approach just doesn't work. If you have a conversation with a physician, any physician or dietitian across the country, and one of the things you'll hear them say most commonly is, "Oh, I feel like I say the same things over and over, and people just never do anything different."
Right.
And my response to that is, yeah. That's right, because that doesn't result in behaviour change. This is one of the traps for all. I'm a psychologist. Danielle's a dietitian. All of us who trained in a profession have, at least those of us who trained some years ago, have sort of come through school with this idea that we are kind of full of wisdom and knowledge and information about how to help people, and our job is just to get that information into people's heads. Right. That does not work. So we don't do that. We don't tell people what not to do. So we don't have messages like, don't do this, or don't eat sugar, or don't drink alcohol, or don't eat donuts, or whatever it might be. And part of the reason for that is because telling someone what not to do doesn't tell them anything. You learn nothing about what to do when you just have a list of what not to do. But the most important reason, of course, is what I just mentioned, which is that telling someone anything is not going to result in a behaviour change. What we do is work to support people to identify what has value and meaning and purpose for them, and then to build the lifestyle changes that they want on the basis of that. So we certainly have guidelines and principles that we teach, and Danielle's referred to some of those. Some of the science of nutrition, what happens when you eat particular foods in your body. That's unarguable. We know that just like your Chevy Camaro has some design specifications. If you put 91 gas into it, it probably won't go as well as if you put 98 gas into it. If you don't keep the oil topped up, you're going to be in trouble on the I-75 and so on. So we treat our cars with respect. We treat aircraft with respect, but our own bodies, we sometimes are a bit slower to understand what the design specifications of a body are. Thankfully, the design specifications of a human body are actually fairly broad. So you don't have to go to the gym 5 days a week and lift 300 pounds 400 times to get fit. You can walk your dog, you can play with your kids, you can go mountain bike riding, you can surf. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. But what we support people to do is to tune into their own values, to tune into who am I as a person? What's the life that I want? What are the values that I have? Where do I see myself 5 years from now? What are the things that make me me and no one else like me? And how can I connect with those? How can I bring those to life in a way that will lead me to be able to say, I'm having a good life. I'm having a really good life. Because at the bottom of it all, the daily habits that we have reflect the values that we hold on to. And so when we can get a hold of those values for ourselves and recognize the importance of something to us, whether it's the importance of being able to play with my kids, or whether it's the importance of, being able to move quickly because I love traveling and I love walking, or whatever it might be. When people can connect to those values, then the process of making small behavioral changes becomes so much more easy, because you've got an aiming point, you've got something that you're working towards, and you've got something that means so much to you that you will do what it takes to get there.
I would think that's how you get buy-in, right? I mean, the whole point of all of this is to have people buy into it. And when you add those values to it, and you can connect them with that person and their identity, I would think that's what you need. Because I was going to ask, I was jotting down questions before the interview, and in my mind, that one of the hardest things to do to get buy-in within these communities is to give them a training program, because they are inundated with mandatory training, right? And as soon as they see this come up, there's a wall that comes up. You're like, oh, here we go again. But the way you just said it, Simon, I think is to me, that's got to be the way it works. That's got to be the way to lower those barriers. And then Danielle, getting back to the group of again, having your peers open up and tell their own experiences, and then somebody else sounding off. Oh yeah. I felt that. I couldn't sleep. That I had this physical reaction to that vehicle accident. Yeah, I love it. Hey, how did you get Mike involved in this too? Because from watching his videos and doing a little research on him, like you said, in the world of kettlebells, he's kind of a big deal. So yeah. How did that work?
I'm really lucky.
Okay.
So, you should, if you want to have Mike on too, he loves being on podcasts. He's great.
Does he?
He's a lot of fun. So I actually worked, we did Santa Clara County Fire Department. He was doing the fitness part of that health and wellness program. And he and I just hit it off from day one. And so I actually ended up leaving my job, and then we started talking after that. And, he and I were like, hey, let's do our own, because there were certain things we wanted to do a little bit differently. And so he and I teamed up, and that's how this all started. But he was also at the same time developing Kettlebell Lifestyle. And are you familiar with Kettlebell Lifestyle?
I wasn't, but I am now, because in doing the research for this,
Yeah. So he was actually putting that together. And so we decided, after about 6-8 months, and then COVID hit, and I'm like, just focus on that, and then just come back in when you're feeling a little bit like you have a little bit more bandwidth. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I got this for now. And so we still were working together, but a little bit not in a full partnership. And mm-hmm. So that's now he's got a little bit more bandwidth, and that's why he's adding some more fire specific programs into the First and Wellness program.
Mm-hmm. What alternative therapies have you guys explored, or what has been the reaction from these communities when you start bringing up they're just communities I know that aren't comfortable in talking about their feelings. Mm-hmm. Right? We can talk about not sleeping. We can talk about anger. Maybe that might be one they're comfortable talking about. But when you start talking about some other things like, I'm at a loss of words. I had it. I'll edit this part out. But when they start talking about not feeling confident in ways and maybe suffering in certain aspects of their life that they may not want to be public or talk about in a group. How do you get over those hurdles within those communities?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say one thing that I think of right off the bat is even just the language you're using. And sometimes just asking about experiences versus what was your feeling about that, or what were you feeling? just the language that you're using can open people up a little bit more, where they're not feeling like, oh man, now I got to talk about my feelings. Right. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I thought about when we were asking that was, one of it is just like kind of trying to dig into what's important to them and their intrinsic motivation. So for example, let's say someone wants to lose weight. A lot of times those factors are external. Like, I want to look better at the beach, or my wife's nagging me about my weight, or my doctor's nagging me, or whatever. But when you start, getting into why losing weight might be important, it's, if you start getting into, health reasons, I have to wear a CPAP because I have sleep apnea. And if I lose some weight, I can not wear that. I can stop having to wear that. I hate wearing it. Or, I really like surfing, but I've noticed that I can't paddle as well because I'm out of shape and I'm uncomfortable, and my body I can't get up on my board as fast because, I've got all this belly weight. And so, when you start digging into what's important to them, then sometimes like the feelings might trickle in, and maybe that, but really it's talking about, experiences and why these things are important, really getting into that intrinsic motivation. Because a lot of us do stuff, and myself included, for external reasons, something I think someone thinks about me, or something I think I should be doing, that should in your vocabulary is off. It's like a bomb. So it's lethal. So that's when I start hearing myself say, I should do something, that's a trigger for me to go, why do I feel like I have to do that? Why is that important? And that's like a real good trigger word to start listening for in your vocabulary.
Yeah. We over time, and I've seen this as a psychologist, JT, and it has, in many ways, it has its origins in the very, very, very early days of psychiatry and psychology. So I'm talking about the beginning of the 20th century, really more than 100 years ago, where there was a view which persisted for a long time that somehow feelings sit at the root, or sit at the heart of everything. So we created this hierarchical structure where we'd have feelings at the very bottom and visible actions at the very top. And so the job would be to push past the actions, push past the thoughts, push past the beliefs, until we get right down to the feelings. I don't think that's a particularly helpful way of understanding human beings. And for me, it makes much more sense to think about all those things that I've just mentioned. So feelings, beliefs, values, thoughts, the meaning that we attribute to things, to think of those in a cycle where each element is informed by or affected by the one before, and also affects the one after. And that's a much more useful way to think about it, because when you think about it that way, when you conceptualize it that way, it really doesn't matter where you start. Ultimately, you will end up connecting all of those dots. And so that's what we do. We don't kind of we don't dive for feelings and push people to kind of reveal feelings. But when we start talking about what matters to you in your life, and people are happy to talk about what matters to them. When we talk about what matters to you in your life, the feeling and the emotion suddenly is visible. It's right there. And so and it doesn't matter that we as the coaches or we as the operators of the program get access to that. What matters is that the person speaking now has access to that. They get to experience their own feeling and their emotion as they're talking about their value. Anecdotally, one of the things I'll say is that when I have, and I haven't done this specifically in a first responder group, but if I have a private conversation with someone about values and vision and the value that they see in their life and the vision that they have for their life, and one of my favourite questions to ask is, when you are no longer here, how are you hoping people will remember you? That's a great way of getting it at vision. But when I have that sort of discussion with people, pretty much 100% of the people I'm speaking with end up in tears.
Sure.
And it's not tears of sadness; it's tears of joy. It's tears that reflect this kind of welling of emotion that suddenly they're connecting with something that's so important to them and matters so much to them, and they'd kind of lost contact with for a time.
I've really gotten into stoicism over the past couple of years, and one of the most important things, right, is remember you're going to die, and your time here is limited, and you're here in the now. So let's do what you know. I mean, we can get into it. That's a rabbit hole. But
are you also addicted to reading the Daily Stoic?
So, like many, I was initially turned on to Stoicism from Ryan Holiday, but I had Donald Robertson. He was the author of How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. It's great. It's a great book on Stoicism. But I
love Stoicism too. I got reintroduced to it by a professional colleague, and it's I'm loving what I read about it.
Yeah, I've got 2 episodes just completely devoted to it. I'm a fan of it as well. So if a department head is, I've tons of department heads listening right now. Not really, but if they were and they wanted to get in touch with you guys, I'm assuming we just go onto the website. Is it something you're doing just right now on the West Coast, or what does that look like?
I think the best way is to go on the website, and that way they can get a little bit more information. They can fill out a contact us form. They can also call us at 831-316-4669, and that number is also on the website. Or they can email us at info@firstinwellness.com. But yeah, I mean, we're open to going anywhere in the U.S., really, the world. We'd be a little bit limited to English. I know a little Spanish, and I was learning Spanish, but I've been in contact with a few heads up in Canada, in the Toronto area, because we have a couple coaches up there as well. But yeah, the idea is that we make this as accessible to as many departments that want this for their firefighters and eventually police, and hopefully we'll get to EMTs and dispatchers is our hope. So yeah.
I whenever I talk to anybody about this subject of wellness within these communities, obviously management should be doing it because they care about the health of their employees, right? Number one, they should care about the people that are serving the community. But number two, if you just look at it as a monetary issue, and you said, hey, if we do this a little bit beforehand, if we keep them at a certain level along the way, the fruits of these labors pay off for a long time. If you look at a law enforcement side, I can't speak to every incident, but there's a lot of times that these, just like the firefighters, these men and women are in traumatic situations on a regular basis. They're not sleeping, and then they're expected to make these perfect decisions. And it's very easy to take a snapshot and what we see in the media and go, look how screwed up this situation is. But if we just peel that onion back a little bit and you go, all right, it may be hard to give this man or woman empathy right now, but the job that these people are doing within these workforces, it is not sustainable without a program or something like yours or that person finding an outlet to work through some of these things. So I commend you guys. I think it's great. The whole story behind it is great. How you guys have connected. Danielle, I know you kind of always breeze over your own story on your health issues leading into this, and I won't press you on it, but however it came to be that you've aligned yourself with these communities, I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to say thank you for doing it and making all this happen. I think it's fantastic. I'm excited to see where this program goes, and I really hope it expands. I hope you have to learn more languages. That's what I hope.
Yeah. Well, we definitely just want to be of service, and I'm happy to talk about my health stuff. I just don't like to take a lot of time out of the other really important stuff and talk about me. So
yeah, I've listened to a couple of things. I always got a chuckle as you breezed over these. But
JT, the other thing that's worth noting just really briefly is Danielle and I, of course, aren't first responders. But we do. One of the things we did really early on was set up an advisory panel for ourselves. And our advisory panel, which is an international one, including firefighter here in Australia, is a panel of first responders. And so we speak to them about what we're doing, and we take advice from them, people who are currently living and working in the first responder world, about what we're doing. So we've got I think five in the US, one out here in Australia, 2 women firefighters on the advisory panel, people who have been first responders. Some of them have been first responders for 30 plus years. So military veterans as well. So so we really depend on them to guide us in our thinking and planning and what we do.
Yeah. You probably know Michael Sugru.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
yep.
He's on our panel. Yeah.
He probably doesn't have nice things to say. I talked to him on the phone, but I need to get him on, and I just the guy's everywhere. First of all, he's literally everywhere.
He is.
It's impressive.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I got to get him on here. I think we're very like-minded in a lot of things. I think he has a lot to the conversation. So, everyone on your panel. I mean, I've gone through the website. You guys have a really impressive operation, and you've brought on some really amazing people. So, I know it's probably a weird time to start it with COVID and everything going on, but if there's a time that these communities need it, it's now. I mean, they always need it, but for some of the challenges that they've gone through, dealing with the pandemic as a first responder, it's a tough job.
Yes.
So,
Well, the good thing about COVID is it's like accelerated our learning curve about like all the things that could possibly go wrong. Right. From shipping kettlebells taking 2 months to get there to mostly shipping stuff, but just and then schedules being impacted with, now we need to vaccinate the whole county. And so, so I mean, just things like that's been actually quite good, because it's accelerated our learning curve. So, this time we're doing this differently, and we're changing this, we're changing that. And I mean, I tell all the participants that we work with, give me the really bad stuff that you don't want to say to my face. That's the information I want, because that's how we're going to improve the program. Like, the good stuff is good and it feels good.
Right.
Yeah. But the bad stuff, tell me that. So, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. All right. Unless you guys have something else you want to add about the program, I know you're on a bit of a time crunch here, so I want to be, good with your time as well.
I'm good. Yeah.
Awesome.
I really appreciate you having us on and
absolutely. Thanks,
it's really fun.
Oh yeah, please. As this thing grows, I want you guys to think of this as a place to always come back if you've got a message you want to get out. I love what you're doing. And actually, we're going to talk a little bit more, maybe how we can work with each other here in a sec when I hit the record button off here. So, but thanks guys so much, and please everyone log on to First at Wellness, and I'll have the links for everything on the show notes as well. That's it for me. Thanks to Danielle and to Simon for coming on and explain what First Wellness is doing. I think it's important work. I think we need more programs like this. It's a good time where organizations are looking at these issues and finally doing something about it. So there's a lot of work to yet to be done, but thanks to organizations like First and Wellness for doing it. And all right, that's it. Please log on to the website. Please go to, wherever you listen to your podcast, leave a review for this. I don't know why it means something, but for whatever reason it does. Not me personally, but the gods at Apple and Google and I don't know, somewhere else. But all right, I will see you all next week.